difficulty, he determined to let the necessary intimation reach her through the medium of a message to the Major, announcing his departure for London on business, and asking if he could be of service to any member of the family. Having thus removed the only obstacle to his freedom of action, Allan consulted the timetable, and found, to his disappointment, that there was a good hour to spare before it would be necessary to drive to the railway station. In his existing frame of mind, he would infinitely have preferred starting for London in a violent hurry. When the time came at last, Allan, on passing the steward's office, drummed at the door, and called through it to Mr. Bashwood, "I'm going to town. Back to-morrow." There was no answer from within, and the servant, interposing, informed his master that Mr. Bashwood, having no business to attend to that day, had locked up the office, and had left some hours since. On reaching the station, the first person whom Allan encountered was Pedgift Junior, going to London on the legal business which he had mentioned on the previous evening at the great house. The necessary explanations exchanged, and it was decided that the two should travel in the same carriage. Allan was glad to have a companion, and Pedgift, enchanted as usual to make himself useful to his client, bustled away to get the tickets and to see to the luggage. Sauntering to and fro on the platform until his faithful follower returned, Allan came suddenly upon no less a person than Mr. Bashwood himself, standing back in a corner with the guard of the train, and putting a letter, accompanied to all appearance by a fee, privately into the man's hand. "Hallo!" cried Allan, in his hearty way. "Something important there, Mr. Bashwood, eh?" If Mr. Bashwood had been caught in the act of committing murder, he could hardly have shown greater alarm than he now testified at Allan's sudden discovery of him. Snatching off his dingy old hat, he bowed bareheaded, in a palsy of nervous trembling from head to foot. "No, sir, no, sir, only a little letter, a little letter, a little letter," said the deputy steward, taking refuge in reiteration, and bowing himself swiftly backward out of his employer's sight. Allan turned carelessly on his heel. "I wish I could take to that fellow," he thought, "but I can't. He's such a sneak. What the deuce was there to tremble about? Does he think I want to pry into his secrets?" Mr. Bashwood's secret on this occasion concerned Allan more nearly than Allan supposed. The letter which he had just placed in charge of the guard was nothing less than a word of warning addressed to Mrs. Oldershaw, and written by Miss Gwilt. "If you can hurry your business," wrote the major's governess, "do so, and come back to London immediately. Things are going wrong here, and Miss Milroy is at the bottom of the mischief. This morning she insisted on taking up her mother's breakfast, always on other occasions taken up by the nurse. They had a long confabulation in private, and half an hour later I saw the nurse slip out with the letter, and take the path that leads to the great house. The sending of the letter has been followed by young Armadale's sudden departure for London, in the face of an appointment which he had with me for to-morrow morning. This looks serious. The girl is evidently bold enough to make a fight of it for the position of Mrs. Armadale of Thorpe Ambrose, and she has found out some way of getting her mother to help her. Don't suppose I am in the least nervous or discouraged, and don't do anything till you hear from me again. Only get back to London, for I may have serious need of your assistance in the course of the next day or two. I send this letter to town to save a post, by the midday train, in charge of the guard. As you insist on knowing every step I take at Thorpe Ambrose, I may as well tell you that my messenger, for I can't go to the station myself, is that curious old creature whom I mentioned to you in my first letter. Ever since that time he has been perpetually hanging about here for a look at me. I'm not sure whether I frighten him or fascinate him. Perhaps I do both together. All you need care to know is that I can trust him with my trifling errands, and possibly, as time goes on, with something more. L.G. Meanwhile, the train had started from the Thorpe Ambrose station, and the squire and his travelling companion were on their way to London. Some men, finding themselves in Allan's company under present circumstances, might have felt curious to know the nature of his business in the metropolis. Young Pedgift's unerring instinct as a man of the world penetrated the secret without the slightest difficulty. The old story, thought this wary old head, wagging privately on its lusty young shoulders. There's a woman in the case, as usual. Any other business would have been turned over to me. Perfectly satisfied with this conclusion, Mr. Pedgift the younger proceeded with an eye to his professional interest to make himself agreeable to his client in the capacity of volunteer courier. He seized on the whole administrative business of the journey to London, as he had seized on the whole administrative business of the picnic at the Broads. On reaching the terminus, Allan was ready to go to any hotel that might be recommended. His invaluable solicitor straightway drove him to a hotel at which the Pedgift family had been accustomed to put up for 3 generations. "You don't object to vegetables, sir?" said the cheerful Pedgift, as the cab stopped at a hotel in Covent Garden Market. "Very good. You may leave the rest to my grandfather, my father, and me. I don't know which of the 3 is most beloved and respected in this house. How do you do, William?" Our head waiter, Mr. Armadale. "Is your wife's rheumatism better? And does the little boy get on nicely at school?" "Your master's out, is he? Never mind, you'll do. This, William, is Mr. Armadale of Thorpe Ambrose. I have prevailed on Mr. Armadale to try our house. Have you got the bedroom I wrote for? Very good. Let Mr. Armadale have it instead of me. My grandfather's favourite bedroom, sir, number 57 on the 2nd floor. Pray take it. I can sleep anywhere. Will you have the mattress on the top of the feather bed? You hear, William. Tell Matilda the mattress on the top of the feather bed. How is Matilda? Has she got the toothache as usual? The head chambermaid, Mr. Armadale, and a most extraordinary woman. She will not part with a hollow tooth in her lower jaw. My grandfather says, have it out. My father says, have it out. I say, have it out. And Matilda turns a deaf ear to all 3 of us. Yes, William, yes. If Mr. Armadale approves, this sitting-room will do. About dinner, sir? Shall we say, in that case, 7:30? William, 7:30. Not the least need to order anything, Mr. Armadale. The head waiter has only to give my compliments to the cook, and the best dinner in London will be sent up, punctual to the minute, as a necessary consequence. Say Mr. Pedgift Junior, if you please, William. Otherwise, sir, we might get my grandfather's dinner or my father's dinner, and they might turn out a little too heavy and old-fashioned in their way of feeding for you and me. As to the wine, William, at dinner my champagne, and the sherry that my father thinks nasty. After dinner, the claret with the blue seal. The wine my innocent grandfather said wasn't worth 6 pence a bottle. Ha ha! Poor old boy! You will send up the evening papers and the playbills just as usual, and that will do, I think, William, for the present. An invaluable servant, Mr. Armadale. They're all invaluable servants in this house. We may not be fashionable here, sir, but, by the Lord Harry, we are snug. A cab? You would like a cab? Don't stir. I've rung the bell twice. That means, cab wanted in a hurry. Might I ask, Mr. Armadale, which way your business takes you? Toward Bayswater. Would you mind dropping me in the park? It's a habit of mine, when I'm in London, to air myself among the aristocracy. Yours truly, sir, has an eye for a fine woman and a fine horse, and when he's in Hyde Park he's quite in his native element. Thus the all-accomplished Pedgift ran on, and by these little arts did he recommend himself to the good opinion of his client. When the dinner hour united the travelling companions again in their sitting room at the hotel,